Necro definitely feels like one of Street Fighter's more underappreciated characters. He's only been playable in the Street Fighter 3 series, and even in Third Strike, which is his strongest iteration, not that many people play him. There are plenty of good Necro players, and they're incredibly fun to watch in my opinion, but at lower to mid levels you almost never see this character. I think a lot of newer players are put off by his weird style and unorthodox playstyle, and that's a shame. He's a really cool character in my opinion. If you didn't know any better, you might just take a look at Necro's long stretchy normals and be like, oh, so he's Dawson but Street Fighter 3. So he's a zoner. Definitely not. He does share some things with Dawson, like the long range stretchy normals and the drill kicks, but Necro is playing a completely different game. He has these long range stretchy normals, there's no way around it, but they don't define his toolkit or his gameplay. They're just tools that he has as a part of a much greater and much deeper toolkit. I'd say Necro is much more comparable to someone like Chun-Li than Dawson. Both these characters are known for their space control, but neither of them want to keep you at full screen the entire game, that's for sure. Chun-Li and Necro would rather keep you around the range that their best pokes can reach you, so for Chun-Li that would be stuff like crouching medium kick, sweep, Kara throw, and the get the fuck away from me button. However, they're not doing this the entire game. They're doing it so that they can safely build enough meter to get a super, and when they do, their game plan kind of shifts to something more offensively orientated so they can make a big play. Now they may share some similarities in their game plan, but obviously Chun-Li and Necro are very different characters. I mean, Chun-Li is arguably top 1, and Necro is more around the level of characters like Ryu, Elena, and Ibuki. Very solid characters in their own right, with a lot of great tools, but clearly below some of the better characters in the game. I mean, for a start, Chun-Li's movement is much better than Necro's for the most part. Necro is quite slow, both in terms of his normals and his movement. Chun-Li generally has less options for controlling space than Necro, but the options she does have are incredibly oppressive. Standing heavy punch is an extremely notorious button, and for a very good reason. And on top of that, she's got the best Kara throw in the game. Also, while she's very limited without meter for the most part, once she has a super stocked, she is absolutely terrifying. Her crouching medium kick is not only a great poke, but it's an easy confirm into super. On top of that, it's an incredible punishing tool because it goes extremely far, extremely fast. As an example, Necro's standing heavy punch is -9 on hit, so you know what that means. Now Necro has great space control, but overall he has to work a little bit harder because none of his buttons are really oppressive, rather he has a good variety of buttons that each have their own chance to shine. The closest thing he has to like an oppressive button is probably his standing medium punch. It's a really good button. It's frame 8, it's 0 on block, it can only be parried high, and it cancels to super, which is really nice as a buffer. Does good damage and a whole lot of stun. Now, this is a great button, but calling it oppressive is definitely a stretch. It's not perfect by any means. For a start, a lot of characters can crouch under it. Even with a super stocked, it's just not a particularly scary button. The standalone damage without a super is quite low, and even if you have one, you can't hit confirm a super off this the way that you can with Chun's crouching medium kick. If you're going into super off this, you're typically doing it as a buffer or as a whiff punish. I will talk about his other key normals, but I want to talk about his supers first, specifically his Super 3. This is a character-defining super, and it's really important for Necro, which is why I want to talk about it first. Necro's Super 3 is definitely his best super, and it's one of his best traits as a character in general. It's just a really versatile tool that does a ton for him. For a start, it's the only super that he can hold more than one of, so even though the bar is quite short, which in a way is a good thing because it means you have more access to your super, it gives him the most meter to play with. Necro has quite good EX moves, so this is nice. It's got great range and it hits on frame 3, so it's very good for punishes. You have a myriad of options for comboing into it, and overall the damage is good. However, I'd argue the most iconic thing about this super isn't the damage or the speed, but how much stun it does. I guess one of the closest things to a weakness this super has is that it's very awkward to juggle into. Although I don't think it's a big deal, it's not like you're strapped for options to land this in the first place, so it's fine. Now, while you're typically not going to be juggling into it, you can juggle out of a Super 3, which on top of just being really fucking cool, is incredibly useful. It is technically possible to juggle a Super 3 after a Super 3. Now, in this scenario, you only get one hit of the second Super 3. I have seen situations where someone gets all 3 hits, but I think it's really character dependent. I've only ever seen it on Alex. Super 1 is kind of in the same boat as Chun SA1. It's a good super in its own right, but you're generally not going to be picking this because you just have a better one available. Like Chun SA1, there are definitely some matchups where this super can shine, particularly because it's a very good anti-air. It does good damage and it's really difficult to parry. Maybe versus Young and Yang to dissuade them from doing too many dive kicks, or versus Hugo, because it's just really, really important to not let him get in. Now this super does have things holding it back for sure. For a start, you can only stock one, so that's less meter to play with, and more importantly in my opinion, it does absolutely zero stun. That's a big deal in my opinion, because the high stun output of SA3 is so useful for Necro. On top of the fact that if you actually get the stun, that's a fat punish for you, the threat of stun makes a lot of what Necro does scarier. You have to respect Necro a lot more when he can potentially stun you off 2 or 3 interactions. Even outside of these matchups, it does have a few things going for it over SA3. For a start, it's faster at frame 2, so it can pick up some punishes that SA3 can't. It also combos in a few areas where SA3 doesn't, such as after anti-air lightning or light punch spin hook. The damage is a little underwhelming even if you mash, but it is worth noting that light punch spin hook is a 2-hit +1 on block move, so this is one of the freest confirms in the game to fish for. Maybe if you're a newer player you'd get more out of SA1, but I would recommend making the effort to learn SA3. If you're gonna learn a character, you might as well learn the best version of that character. SA2 is the meme one. It looks cool and it does good damage, but unfortunately this one's really bad. It has the longest bar of any of Necro's supers, and while it is a command grab, it's one of those command grabs. The startup occurs after the super freeze, so the opponent can just hold up after the super freeze and not get grabbed. It has very little whiff recovery for a command grab super, which is kind of strange, and you could maybe play around it. But if you're trying to play around the fact that your super is incredibly easy to avoid, then maybe it's time to pick a different super. You can combo into this move on a back-turned opponent, and similar to Alex with medium or heavy chop, Necro does have a move that inflicts back-turn. However, the scaling is awful. It's out-damaged by this combo that just uses one EX move. Also, just in case you think this might be worth it for the potential side switch, it really isn't. On top of the fact that it does more damage for less meter, heavy hook into back medium kick into EX hook has so much corner carry that rather than swapping sides to get the corner, it just kinda gives you the corner from anywhere. So yeah, this super is really bad. If you're gonna use it, save it for 2 AM friendlies. Don't subject randos on Fight K to this, they deserve better. Moving on to specials, there's definitely some weird stuff in here, so I'll kinda get that out the way first. First of all, Necro has 2 overhead special moves. Quarter circle back and kick is Rising Cobra. and quarter circle back and punch is Flying Viper. Both of these moves are overheads, and they kind of serve the same purpose, even though they look pretty different. They're the kind of move that you just want to occasionally sneak in now and again to catch the opponent off guard. Rising Cobra is overall slightly faster, and it does a little bit more damage than Flying Viper. However, on the flip side, it's got much less range, it's slightly more unsafe on block, with all three versions being -5, and it builds less meter on hit and block. The light, medium, and heavy versions hit on frame 23, 25, and 27 respectively, but realistically, if you're using this move, you are going to be using the light kick version. The point of a move like this is to just occasionally sneak it in to catch your opponent off guard, so you don't want to be messing with the slower, more reactable versions. If the opponent does react to this, then you're potentially in a lot of trouble, because it's a very easy parry, and you're considered crouching during the recovery, which means whatever punish they go for is going to sting a little bit more. EX Rising Cobra is pretty bad. It does more damage than the meterless versions, and it does hit twice, but it's slower than the light kick version at frame 25. It is safer than the meterless versions at -3 on block, but you're still giving up your turn, and you can be punished by things like Chun Super 2 and Ken or Dudley Super 3. The meterless versions of Flying Viper aren't that great. Stronger versions have more distance and do more damage. They also all knock down. You could potentially go over the opponent's normals with this, which is nice, and it is safer on block than Rising Cobra, with the light punch version being -3 and the medium and heavy versions being -2. However, because of how slow this move is, it's very risky to throw out. The light and medium versions are frame 26, and the heavy version is frame 28. It's only a single hit, so this is kind of asking to get parried. However, the EX version is pretty great. It's faster than the meterless versions at frame 24, and it hits twice, so it's a trickier parry. It doesn't knock the opponent down, but not only are you +2 on hit, but this move is +2 on block, so unless you get parried, you're completely safe. If you've got meter to burn, you can definitely sneak this in from time to time. Personally, if you want an overhead without meter, you want Light Kick Rising Cobra, and if you're willing to burn the meter, that's where EX Flying Viper gets to shine. That or you could use Universal Overhead. Universal Overhead is notable because if meaty or spaced, you can actually link out of it, which is really valuable. Half Circle Forward and Punch is Tornado Hook, or just Spin Hook. All four versions have pretty distinct uses. It's a really cool move. Light Punch Hook is one of your safest combo enders. It's frame 6, so it combos from lights, and it's +1 on block, so very safe. It is super cancelable, but like I showed earlier, it's not great for super cancels because it launches. That means you get a pretty weak Super 1, and you really just don't get Super 3. However, the launch is nice in other ways, because in the corner, you can juggle into a down back heavy punch. The damage is very respectable. The first hit doesn't have that much forward movement, so if you're not close to the opponent, it can whiff. Now bear in mind that while the move is safe on block, it's a 2-hit safe on block move, so a good player can potentially block the first hit and red parry the second to get a punish anyways. Medium Punch Hook is super important for Necro. It is unsafe at -4 on block, and it's -2 on hit as well, which kinda seems bad, but still, this is super important because it's one of your best ways for going into super. Now, -4 isn't that unsafe, so it can be very, very tempting to just kind of do this move and cancel the super on hit and hope for the best on block. Now, at lower levels you will definitely get away with this. God knows I do, but it's definitely a bit of a bad habit that you should avoid. If the opponent knows this is -4, you are asking to eat a reversal super here, and a lot of characters can punish it without super, even though it's pretty tight. Because the move is a little bit slower overall, it feels slightly easier to red parry than the light punch version. And because of the higher recovery, if you do get red parried, you're prone to eating a bigger punish. It's too slow to combo for many of your cancelable normals, and it's very unsafe at -18 on block, but it's +15 on hit. If you do land this, you're doing a lot of damage. Also, in case you're wondering, yes, that completely meterless combo does more damage than your only real combo to Super 2. Nice. Now that combo I just showed is character specific. It doesn't work on the entire cast. Some characters you don't get all 5 hits of heavy DP, so it's not optimal, but that's completely fine. If you do land this move, you've just got so many different options. You can do back medium kick into EX spin hook for the corner carry. You can do down back heavy punch into back medium punch in the corner for a reset. And against the characters heavy DP doesn't work on, Oro, Makoto, Twins, and Elena, you can do this. On top of the fact that damage is still good, it feels a little more reliable than heavy DP. Character specific stuff is a bit of a theme with Necro, but I'll touch on that later. Of course, you can go into super after a heavy spin hook, but the scaling is kind of high. I don't think I'd recommend it. You wouldn't think it, but that combo does the exact same damage as this one. In fact, if you do a taunt before both of them, the second one does significantly more damage. Necro's taunt simply increases the damage of his next hit or combo by around 33%. It's also got a hitbox, which is pretty cool. And you can hold it, which is even cooler. DP and Punch is Necro's lightning attack. It's technically called Denji Blast, but I guarantee you absolutely no one cares. Also, I really appreciate that this move is a DP that you extend by mashing, rather than just being a move that you input by mashing. I've mentioned it before, but I fucking hate moves that you input by mashing. Just a completely personal thing, but I really, really don't like them. Light Punch Lightning is a really interesting move. It's nothing like Blanca's Lightning, definitely not. It's got quite low damage and it's not plus on block at all. It's actually unsafe at -10. However, it's very fast at frame 6, and while it's unsafe on block, it recovers a lot faster on whiff than you'd expect. So it's okay as a poke or like a counter poke. And what's very interesting about it is that not only does it cancel the super, but the window to cancel the super is quite large. It's 23 frames, so easily hit confirmable. It's also fast enough to combo from lights, which is really nice because it gives you a confirm to full super 3 off a low. Maybe calling it a confirm is a bit generous, because remember, Light Punch Lightning is still -10 on block, but still, it's nice to have. It's also a very nice anti-air. It is only one hit, so it loses to parry, but it's very fast, it's got a good hitbox, and most notably, you can juggle off it. If the opponent stays on the same side as you, you can get either a stand heavy punch or a stand heavy kick. Stand heavy kick does more damage, stand heavy punch is generally easier. If the opponent crosses over, you can get medium punch lightning, heavy punch lightning, back heavy kick, or down back heavy punch. Medium and heavy are much more unsafe, and they're a little bit slower, being frame 8 and frame 10 respectively, but they're great moves in their own right, they just serve a different purpose. I've already shown that the heavy version does incredible damage. Although that's only if all 5 hits connect, which they just sometimes don't. Because they hit multiple times, 3 for medium and 5 for heavy, they make for great anti-airs. You can also, like, cross up while you're trying to parry it, and suddenly you have to start parrying in the other direction. It's very tricky. Necro's last special move is a really interesting one. Half circle forward and kick is Snake Fang, and it's a low hit grab. It can be blocked low, but it can't be parried low, which is pretty cool. All 3 versions are frame 12, but stronger versions add more damage at the cost of more recovery, so they're -13, -15, and -17 on block respectively. You're primarily using this as a poke, so you're only going to use the light one for the most part. You've got to be smart about using it, because -13 is still pretty unsafe, so you got to space it well. It's a good idea to cancel into it off normals, because that way you build a lot of space between you and your opponent. Another nice thing about cancelling into it is that on a crouching opponent, back medium punch and back medium kick actually combo into the light version. Okay, actually now that I think about it, they combo into any version. It's just, this is the one you actually use, so who gives a shit. On top of comboing into it, it's possible to combo out of too. Although keep in mind, the grab itself doesn't actually do any damage. It's the opponent impacting the ground after the grab that does the damage, and interrupting that with a normal means that you don't get the damage from the grab. If you're doing this, you're doing it to build meter, not for the damage. Unless you've got some crazy character-specific combo that does more than the grab. Necro sort of, kind of, not really has one more special move. When done versus a back-turned opponent, Snake Fang turns into German Suplex. Literally no one cares. I've never seen anyone do this in a real match, and I'd imagine that's because it's bad. I don't know, dude. This shit basically doesn't exist. It's whatever. Also, before I go into normals, I will very quickly mention Necro's throw, because it is significantly cooler than the average throw. Because you can combo off it. And that's badass. And it's also important for something I'll get to later. Now, when talking about Necro's normals, it is fair to point out that a couple of them are just kind of dud normals. Stuff like stand light kick, stand medium kick, sweep, crouching heavy punch, and most of his jump normals. They're not terrible, but you're just generally not going to be using them, so I'm just going to leave them be. I've already talked about Necro's standing medium punch, and yes, it's a fantastic button, but he's got some other really standout ones too. One of his most important is his crouching medium kick. This is his furthest reaching low, and it's a really good button. It's frame 12, and it's -5 on block and -4 on hit, which, honestly, for a button with this much range, that hits low, is very, very good. It's got quite a lot of recovery on whiff. So again, you do have to be smart about it, but it's a great button. No getting around it. Necro's crouching medium punch is a decent anti-air. It's not actually disjointed, so there is the risk of losing to jump-ins, and it does only hit once, so there's the risk of getting parried, but where this move shines is in how early it hits. Necro has quite a good variety of anti-airs at his disposal, so someone trying to parry one of his other anti-airs might be caught off guard by how early this hits. I know I pointed out that it was -9 on hit earlier, and it is, but that doesn't change the fact that Necro's stand heavy punch is a genuinely decent button. For a start, it's got more range than any of his other buttons, so it's controlling a space that nothing else in his toolkit really does. Now, it's got a lot of recovery, so you can't use it mindlessly, but you shouldn't be using it mindlessly. It's just something you want to occasionally throw out now and again to remind your opponent that you do have an option to control the space they're in. It's not something that defines your game plan, it's just a tool that you have. Stand heavy kick is kind of the same idea, but it's less about ground control and more about catching people trying to jump. Think of it like Axel's 5P, but a bit chunkier. For the most part, Necro's lights are pretty good. All 6 of them are special cancelable, and they all serve their own purpose for the most part, except Stand Light Kick, which... it's a button. It's fine. Stand Light Punch has the most range out of any of his lights. And it really does have impressive range for a 5-framer, it's a great button. Crouch Light Punch and Crouch Light Kick are both a frame slower at frame 6, but they both have their own things going for them. Crouching Light Punch is nice because it's got a lower hitbox even though it doesn't have as much range, so there's no risk of getting low profiled. It's a great option for checking dashes. Also, on top of that, it's +5 on both hit and block, which is really cool. Crouching Light Kick does the most damage out of his long-range lights. And of course, it hits low, so that's a plus. Moving on to command normals, Necro has a shit ton of them. He has a back variation for all 6 of his normals. A back light punch, back medium punch, back heavy punch, back light kick, back medium kick, back heavy kick, down back heavy punch, and then the 3 versions of drill kick. Drill kicks are super important for Necro because, as I mentioned, his jump is kind of floaty and weird and not that good. However, drill kicks give him a great way to mix up his jump arc. He can vary his air approach so much with this. Now, one thing to keep in mind is to not overuse drill kicks. They are an amazing tool for sure, but you should use them to complement Necro's jump, not to replace it entirely. This is a mistake I definitely made when first playing the character. I just used them all the time and it got really, really predictable. Drill kicks are great, but they're a move, so if you're doing a drill kick, that means you can't air parry, and they are prone to losing to normals and moves and such. Necro has two fantastic jump-ins that you just completely miss out on if you're too focused on doing drill kicks. Jump heavy kick is a very, very beefy button. It's got great range, great damage, and even if you hit it pretty high up, you get a great confirm to super. And if the opponent is looking to parry a jump heavy kick, you can catch them off guard with a diagonal jump medium punch. This is a massive button and it's really nice for catching people off guard or for retreating. Remember, this move is always an overhead, which is really cool. The light kick drill is definitely the worst out of the three. It's occasionally got uses, but it's just got such an awkward angle that it's very hard to space correctly. Arguably its best use is for escaping the corner. Medium is more of a poke, it's much easier to space. It's still very tricky to link out of. The most plus you can make it is +7, but it's a little awkward. Unlike the other two versions, which can only go up to +7, heavy can be +9, and it also builds more meter than the other two. Heavy drill is also really nice on the opponent's wake up, particularly after a super because of the hard knockdown. It's much easier to link out of it when you land a meaty drill kick. Another cool trick you can do is whiff drill kick on their wake up and you'll end up on the other side, which they might not be expecting. You can also do a cross-up heavy drill kick, where the first hit crosses up and the second hit hits on the same side. There's a ton of potential for set play with this. There are situations where on the opponent's wake up, you can jump and do an early drill to hit same side, and delay a drill to hit cross-up. There's a lot of nasty stuff you can do, but most of it is character specific, so get labbing. Moving on to Necro's other command normals, a lot of them are pretty basic, but they're still great nonetheless. Back light kick and back light punch are just his fast lights. They're both frame 3 and +3 on hit and block, which is really good. The differences are that back light punch has more range, while you can chain back light kick. Now one notable thing about back light kick is that it starts Necro's only target combo, and that's back light kick stand medium punch. It's pretty good. It's safe-ish on block at -3, and it's got a good bit of pushback, and while it's not special cancelable, it is super cancelable, so it's a really good confirm. I won't lie though, I find it really hard, I won't lie, that took like 50 tries. But yeah, it's a good confirm if you can do it, unlike me. Back medium kick and back medium punch are Necro's cancelable mediums. I've already shown them off a ton in this video, and they're both great moves for different reasons. Back medium punch is nice because it's a frame faster at frame 4, has more range, and is great for meter build. Back medium kick is a frame slower at frame 5, but it's got better frame advantage, does more damage in stun, and feels a little more consistent in combos. You can roll confirm both into super, which is really rewarding if you can pull it off. I think back medium punch is a little better here, the confirm just feels a bit easier. Feels like you have more time to react. Necro has 3 command heavies: back heavy kick, back heavy punch, and down back heavy punch. I think a bit of a trend with these normals is that I feel like in something like Street Fighter 4 or 5, these normals would be incredibly stupid, but in the context of this game, they're fine. Back heavy kick doesn't have the best range, but it's a frame 12 button that is +12 on hit and +10 on block. Back heavy punch is a launcher that leads to big damage on hit. That is only -3 on block. And down back heavy punch is just an all-around incredible button. It's frame 9, +2 on block, has a disjointed hitbox, it's just all-around incredible. It's a poke, it's an anti-air, it's a combo ender, amazing move. Now, if you just took these moves and slapped them in something like Street Fighter V, they would be incredibly obnoxious, but this isn't Street Fighter V, and here, they all share a very common weakness. They're all only one hit. These moves are amazing on hit and block and all of that, but there's a high risk of you getting parried and eating a big punish. A new player might look at these buttons and just assume that they're beyond broken, and I don't know, I guess if you don't parry, they kind of are. But in reality, they're completely fine. Also, interestingly enough, they don't really look it, but you can actually low parry back heavy punch and down back heavy punch. Okay, so this is the bit that I've really been looking forward to talking about. I want to talk about some of Necro's character-specific stuff. I know a lot of people really don't like character-specific combos, but I think they're really cool. I love the feeling of seeing what character the opponent has picked and going, oh, I know the thing that works on you. Arguably, this is one of Third Strike's most iconic character-specific combos. Every elbow after the first is frame perfect, and this combo only works on Alex, Hugo, and Urien. For the longest time, I thought it was Alex, Hugo, and Dudley. I was fishing for this for like 2 hours versus my friend who plays Dudley. I thought I was just really bad, but luckily no, I was just dumb. Another really cool thing about this combo is that there are like unique variations of it for these 3 individual characters. This one only works on Alex. This one is Urien only. And this one is Hugo only. The last thing I want to talk about is something that's universal to Third Strike, but I just think is particularly cool with Necro. If you're familiar with Third Strike juggles, you'll know that there are moves that cause an air reset. This is standard for Street Fighter. The opponent flips out and they're in a state where you can't combo them. However, in Third Strike, if you stun the opponent, then air resets are just out the window, and you can do whatever the fuck you want as long as it's within the juggle limit. This is incredibly sick to me, and I wish it returned in future installments. I love stuff like this. Necro in particular has really sick stun juggles though. There's a ton of character-specific stuff, and it's really fun to mess around with. It's not just Super that gives you this either. You can get really cool looking juggles off a throw as well. It's also a really nice opportunity to use normals that you otherwise wouldn't. Notice I used a crouch heavy punch and a sweep there. If optimization isn't your thing, you could also just be silly. If you're interested in seeing more stun juggles, and you should be because they're sick as fuck, JMotive has an amazing video showing off a bunch of them. I'll make sure to link it in the description. It's really fun to watch. So, that's Necro in Third Strike. This probably turned out to be really long, but I don't care. There's a lot to talk about with Necro, and most of it is really fucking cool. I really like this character. Out of the ones that Capcom have kind of stopped giving a shit about, I think he's one of the best. Hopefully we see him back someday. Now bear in mind that while the move is safe on block, is that a fucking... that's a big ass tractor. Go on. Awesome.